let me get hot real quick. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. Should I really keep the glasses off for the whole time in the spirit of She's All That? I don't want to upset people and not give y'all what you expect. So I generally cover pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. Today I'm covering a teen movie yet again. It checks a lot of my boxes on this channel. Teen movie, Netflix, reboot, like it is on brand for me. So the movie I'm going to be talking about today is called Hes All That, and it released on Netflix in August. It is a reboot of a 90s classic teen movie called She's All That, and the 2021 version is gender swapped. That's the main difference between the two. I just wanted to discuss this movie and tell you if it's worth watching. There's honestly a lot of interesting stuff that I want to talk about with this movie. Let me talk a little bit about She's All That and then its reboot, He's All That. In case you're unfamiliar, She's All That was released in 1999 and it is a teen rom-com movie, and She's All That starred Freddie Prinze Jr., Rachel Lee Cook, Paul Walker, Usher, Lil' Kim, Gabrielle Union, Matthew Lillard. It was truly star-studded, and I went ahead and rewatched She's All That. I had only seen clips. I was shocked at how many A-list celebrities ended up being there. Even Sarah Michelle Gellar makes like a cameo in the background at some point, probably because she's tied to Freddie Prinze Jr. So the general plot of She's All That is that Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character gets dumped by his hot, popular girlfriend, and he brags to his friends about how he made her hot and popular and that he could do that to any girl. So his best friend, played by Paul Walker, makes a bet with him that he can make a random girl he picks into the next prom queen. This story is actually not an original story. It's based on the Greek myth and play, or I don't know. It's based on the story of Pygmalion. This movie was written at a time when it was popular to adapt classic literature into teen movies. Around that time of She's All That, that was based on Pygmalion, we had the modern adaptation of Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio. We had 10 Things I Hate About You, which was based on Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. But this trend continued into the 2000s, the 2010s, with She's the Man based on 12th Night and Easy A based on The Scarlet Letter. To my surprise, She's All That actually received mixed reviews from critics. When I rewatched it, I thought it was pretty cute and fun, and it was written well, I thought. It surprised me to see that critics did not receive it well. It actually has a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. As much of a cult classic it is, I guess, for people, it did not receive great reviews. However, it was a box office hit. It was #1 at the box office when it was released, and it made the theme song for the movie, Kiss Me by Sixpence None the Richer, super popular, and it went #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed in the top 10 for I think 16 weeks. I don't think I've never seen She's All That in its entirety, so it was definitely new for me. To me, She's All That is super iconic for the transformation scene. The whole movie is essentially about a makeover, so the reveal of the girl made over is a very iconic scene that got parodied a ton. It's referenced a lot of people remember it. That is the memorable moment of this film. It birthed the trope of the nerdy girl taking off her glasses and taking her hair down and suddenly being hot, which is a big controversial part of this movie, I guess, in several ways. First of all, this movie and this part of the movie where the song Kiss Me plays, she comes down the stairs and she's suddenly hot just because she took her glasses off and put her hair down and wore a nice dress. It's seen as kind of a big joke because it is so dumb that she was deemed not hot before these few tweaks to her appearance. Based on what I was reading on Wikipedia, the director is aware that it was a suspend your disbelief moment, that we could all see that she was hot under the glasses. You just gotta roll with it. He compared it to Clark Kent as Superman. It was kind of a self-aware concept, or maybe it was retroactively. They were like, haha, yeah, we were in on it. Either way, this part of the movie is very iconic and it made this song huge. Another sort of controversy with this whole thing is that the message of She's All That is a bit not great. It's kind of like a lot of people can relate to the character of Lainey, who's like this artsy girl who doesn't care about popularity that much, or you know, whatever. She's happy in her little art world. The message is to conform to the popular kids and be deemed hot and live happily ever after with the popular guy. So it's definitely a bit of a controversial message to be sending to young girls, and I think now watching it myself, I get to enjoy it a lot because I'm not a young girl and I could just like see it for the silly teen movie that it is. But I can see how back then it would be criticized for this questionable message. And I did think it was cool how She's All That like busted a lot of my expectations, honestly. I wasn't expecting much. I expected it to be really simple, being such a like blueprint for teen movies. I thought it would be really basic and simple, but it was honestly very rich in its script and its characters. I found it kind of cool that the main girl, who was the nerdy loser one, wasn't even smart. She talked about how she was dumb at school and she's just kind of good at art and stuff, or actually even in art class she's like non-conforming and therefore not getting the best reception all the time. But it was kind of like relatable that she was not great in school. It wasn't that kind of story where she's like super nerdy. It's more like she's artsy and grunge, and it's very 90s. It was also refreshing that the main guy, Freddie Prinze Jr., wasn't this popular jock. I mean, he was a popular jock, but he was also like super smart, and his main thing was like he was student body president and he was intellectual. So it was just like kind of refreshing, and I'm mad more teen movies didn't follow that blueprint of those characters, because they seemed kind of more interesting and relatable. I expected him to just be the dumb jock and her to be the smart artsy girl, but it was a little bit more realistic. She's All That was also a lot more raunchy than I expected. It had like more adult themes here and there sprinkled throughout, had the F word. I expected it as this classic teen movie to be a lot more squeaky clean because it was the 90s. I'm like, they always say like everything gets more graphic and stuff for teens as time goes on, so I thought the 90s would be less, but He's All That was actually a lot more squeaky clean compared to She's All That. So now let me go on to He's All That and its plot, which is very similar to She's All That, except Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character is played by Addison Rae, and Rachel Lee Cook's character is played by this guy named Tanner Buchanan, who is basically like a Cole Sprouse wannabe, no offense, and he's popular in Cobra Kai. And this one is directed by Mark Waters, so it has a different director, but it does have the same writer as She's All That. R. Lee Fleming Jr. is the writer, and I know that sounds insignificant, but it's going to become important, so bear with me. Addison Rae was a popular TikTok influencer. It was quite a controversial casting decision to cast someone we had never seen acting. Madison Pettis is also in this movie, which I was happy to see her. I hadn't seen her since her child acting days on that movie with The Rock. Both Rachel Lee Cook and Matthew Lillard came back for He's All That, but they did not reprise their same characters from She's All That. He's All That is trailing behind on its Rotten Tomatoes score of She's All That, and it's at 32%. It's not trailing too far behind, honestly. I thought She's All That would be higher, but they're about 10% different as of right now. He's All That is also #1 on Netflix this weekend that it's coming out. So is it worth watching? I'm gonna get into a lot of different critiques and tangents here, but overall, I would say no, it is not. Surprise, surprise. As you can probably tell by the title and or thumbnail, it's one of the worst reboots I've seen in a while. It sucks because I had high hopes when I saw that it was directed by Mark Waters. Mark Waters isn't really a household name in directing. Like, he's no, James Cameron, or who's the guy that does the violent ones? It's the Pulp Fiction guy. Oh, Tarantino. Mark Waters, no Tarantino, right? But I recognized his name because I basically know Mean Girls by heart, and I've watched Freaky Friday a ton of times, and Mark Waters directed both Mean Girls and Freaky Friday. Lindsay Lohan is my favorite childhood actress. Anyway, I had high hopes for Hes All That being directed by Mark Waters, but it didn't end up paying off too much. I also wasn't super excited about Addison Rae being the star. At first, I wanted to be supportive of her and stuff, but she did have this moment recently where she fangirled over former President Donald Trump at a UFC fight thing. Only recently, after Hes All That came out, she put out a statement in an interview that said, "I don't support Trump. If someone does, that's their opinion, to each of their own. But it's rare to meet a former president, so introducing myself doesn't mean I stand behind anything that any respective person condones." It's very white privilege, regardless if she does support Trump or not. It definitely doesn't sit right with me in general. After that happened, I just didn't like her anymore. I'm not going to try to like her. I think in general why I find this movie not worth watching, aside from Addison Rae being not the best actress. She was okay. I'm honestly not the best judge of acting in general. I'm pretty easy to convince. I think Addison Rae was a little robotic. She's very smiley. All of her teeth show when she smiles, which I think it made her seem like a very positive type person. I don't know how she is in real life. But there wasn't many levels to her character. It was mostly just her smiling through things with her big, powerful smile. There just wasn't much depth, and I think most of the movie was fine because most of the time she didn't need to give big emotion, but at the end when things started getting emotional and sad, it started feeling a lot more robotic for me. And I think my major issue and why it doesn't feel worth watching to me is the writing. And it just didn't feel in touch with Gen Z. The script was torn because Addison Rae actually plays an influencer. She doesn't play a smart student body president. She plays a influencer at this high school. So they really play up social media as part of her character. It's probably what led to the casting decision of Addison Rae, because she is an influencer herself. But as much as this movie tried to be in touch with social media and make that a big part of the story, it was not very in touch with Gen Z. It definitely felt like a teen movie that could have been written at any time, taking away the parts mentioning social media. To me, it's written by someone that has maybe observed social media but doesn't live inside of it. It's so hard for these Hollywood writers and producers to think about that and put faith in younger people and people of diverse backgrounds as well that do live and breathe online culture. But I can really tell when a reboot is written by someone older and out of touch, that's just sort of observing the world of social media from an outsider's perspective, versus media that is written by people that get it. That just really bothered me. How are you going to center social media in a movie and then not understand social media that well? It's barely scraping the surface to sort of influencer culture and Gen Z as a generation, who is so interesting and unique to previous generations. So in general, the script really disappointed me, and let me get more into the writing. I did some digging because I was like, okay, my theory is that this was written by an older person that maybe consulted with some people around social media but doesn't really understand it. I was correct. As I mentioned before, both movies were written by R. Lee Fleming, who was born in 1970. No shade. However, She's All That had some writing controversy, and it's kind of unclear who wrote the movie. Fleming is credited as the official writer of She's All That, but a very famous other writer claimed at a certain point that he ghost wrote the movie. So Fleming was credited And then M. Night Shyamalan came out and said that he essentially took Fleming's script and rewrote it completely, and that became closest to the final version. But he was pretty uncredited. I'm not sure if he was fully uncredited or just like given a small editor credit or something, but Shyamalan was not credited. If you're not familiar, M. Night Shyamalan is a very critically acclaimed writer known for his Stuart Little films. I'm just kidding. He did write Stuart Little, but he also wrote Sixth Sense, which was his big breakout movie, and he's known for these like suspense thrillers. Most recently, he made that movie Old, which you might know from memes on Twitter. So he's very known and critically acclaimed. And after learning all of this, things made a lot more sense. Originally, they had said that Shyamalan just came in and polished up the script, but he later came out and said, no, he essentially reconfigured it, rewrote it. Then Fleming went ahead and made all the final edits and things for the final script. In the end, I think the director and Fleming himself mentioned how Shyamalan made some of the most iconic parts of the movie. Mainly there was this one part in She's All That where the main couple goes to a performance art type event that's very hipster and edgy and grungy. Very like abstract is the word I'm looking for. Lainey, she is part of the production helping out. And at a certain point, Freddie Prinze Jr. goes up on stage. She's like trying to test him kind of because he's totally out of his comfort zone, and he does this like hacky sack routine thing, just sort of improvised, and people end up liking it. Well, apparently this whole scene about the performance art and all that was Shyamalan's doing, which I found very interesting because that was one of my favorite scenes. It felt like one of the most real. That part was so good at showing sort of where her artsiness comes from, sort of what scene she's coming out of. It was one of the most memorable parts, and it just felt very genuine. I've been in those circles before and experienced those types of performances, and when I tell you it was like on point, realistic to this like hipster art scene, it was. I have a suspicion that Shyamalan was responsible for all of those moments and She's All That I felt that realism. That theory is sort of proven to me by how basic the script on He's All That is. He's All That feels like an outline of a script. It's very like point A to point B with no adding or fleshing out of things happening. So because She's All That and He's All That were both written by Fleming, officially credited as written by Fleming, is what makes me feel like Shyamalan's touch on She's All That was that key ingredient to make it actually feel good and real. It had like flavor and it had richness that He's All That just completely lacked. Not even like in a fun way. Like it wasn't bad in a fun way, and I think that's why I'm saying it's not worth watching. Even if you like bad movies, He's All That is not even worth it. It's not bad enough to be worth it if you're a fan of bad movies. That's what I'm saying. Like it's in this weird in between that is just such a lame and basic script, and I can't get past that. Plus, Fleming writing for today's teens is just not fully there. It's not immersed in Gen Z culture. I brought some examples. Towards the beginning, Addison Rae says something like, "You're pulling my sponsorship? That's very problematic for my college." The word problematic has evolved so much in the past few years as like referring to problematic behavior of people and like toxic and cancel culture. It's part of that sort of vocabulary. Really problematic for my college. That's a weird choice of words that's out of touch in my opinion. Another one was where they're making the bet for the first time. They're like, you want to make the bet or you want to make a bet. Nowadays the vocabulary of young people is saying bet, just the word bet, as a response to things. It would have been really funny and made sense if the girls were talking like, I think I could give a loser guy a makeover, and the friend says like, bet, and then the Addison Rae's like, haha, very funny, and then the friend says, no, like an actual bet. And like evolving on that vocabulary, like that slang of saying bet to things. There were just a lot of these moments that were missing that depth and complexity. And before you get at me that, Delaney, this is just a teen movie. Like, it's basic, of course. Teen movie does not mean it needs to be basic. Teen movie does not mean it needs to be devoid of details and depth. That is no excuse. This movie had a $20 million budget. Like, you can make a well-written teen movie, and we've seen plenty of those. I think She's All That was actually pretty well-written. And this script was just so outliney. Like, look, there was this part where Addison Rae is singing Teenage Dream at a karaoke at this pool party. She's singing Teenage Dream, she's doing great, and then she sees her ex-boyfriend come in with his new girl. The loser guy is watching her perform, falling in love with her TikTok dancing. When she sees her ex-boyfriend, she starts like flailing, not knowing the words or not singing good anymore. The loser guy runs up to the stage and starts singing Teenage Dream by Katy Perry with her. Okay, cool scene, whatever, but there was no depth to it. For example, it would have been great if the loser guy, his name is Cameron, he doesn't have a smartphone because he's like anti-establishment and whatever. And he has a best friend there, Nisha. So it would have been great if he's in the crowd. He sees Addison Rae flailing her song because she sees the boyfriend. It would have been great if Cameron's like, Nisha, I need to borrow your smartphone because I don't have one. Right. The friend Nisha gives him her smartphone. We see him look up the Teenage Dream lyrics because a guy like this, he's very alternative. He's hipster. He's basically Jughead from Riverdale. He wouldn't know the words to Teenage Dream. So we would see him search up Teenage Dream, search the lyrics, find them, run up to the stage, and while he's singing, have his phone sort of referencing the lyrics. That's what I'm talking about when it needed some details like that. Instead, we just got him noticing and running up and singing the song. We don't know why he knows the words. It's just so underdeveloped. And there were so many points in the script where it was just so very that, like, it would tell you what every character was feeling instead of showing you or instead of saying it in like a more interesting way. It was just like, I feel like a fraud. And I know it's a teen movie, but teen movies still have a little bit of nuance here and there. It's not like this from every teen movie. Another part of this poorly written script was the whole reveal of the transformation. She's All That literally created the big reveal after the makeover scene. And He's All That, he comes out of a door, there's no slow-mo, the music lasts like 2 seconds. Also, we see Addison be the one to cut his hair, which to me makes no sense because why would Addison Rae know how to cut hair? That's a very difficult skill to have. It's never explained why she knows how to do that. She's like, I've done it thousands of times, and it's like, why? Like, you're a teen. So she's the one that cuts his hair. She's the one that gives him the makeover. We know that, so there's not this big reveal as much. I mean, the big reveal is that he comes out in the suit. She did the makeover, so I don't buy that she's like surprised by seeing the big reveal. In the original, there was a close-up of her shoes, and there was slow-mo, and she was coming down the stairs. It was so grand. And He's All That. It's just like, he just comes out of a door in regular speed, and it's just like, okay, I'm here. She has her moment where she's like, whoa, kind of thing, but I don't buy it because the script was not set up for that big reveal. Also, the music on it wasn't even Kiss Me. I was like, oh, I wonder what remix they're gonna put of Kiss Me on the reveal scene. The song they put for 2 seconds was not even iconic, and I'm sad about it. At the very end, we have this big prom scene where Addison Rae, spoiler alert, she wins prom queen. She makes a big speech, and it's just funny because, or it's not funny, and that's why it sucks, but she goes up there and does a speech with a whole PowerPoint presentation, and it just feels so out of nowhere. Like, we didn't see her prep this PowerPoint, we didn't see her reference that she was gonna do a speech. It was actually very similar to the Mean Girls final sequence where she wins and breaks up the crown, and when Lindsay Lohan goes up in Mean Girls to make the speech and starts, Mr. Duvall is like, you know, it's not really required of you to make a speech. And Lindsay Lohan's like, I know. And she's just like, keeps going. We didn't even have that little like cute nuance of like Matthew Lillard, who's right there, the principal, saying, It's not required to make a speech. Like, what are you doing? Like, there was just no subtlety or fun detail to the script. It was a fucking outline. I'm sorry. I'm getting really heated. I'm getting heated. So let me get into my other critiques, because there are other critiques. That was just the script critiques. One was that I liked that Freddie Prinze Jr. was kind of like a nerdy character and concerned about college and things. And they took that away for He's All That for the influencer plotline, which felt a lot more like vapid. And it's also unrelatable to be an influencer. I'm kind of annoyed with these teen movies and teen media. The Gossip Girl reboot did the same thing. Having main characters that are influencers, like, that's not relatable. Most kids still are not influencers. Another thing I found quite annoying about this movie was the product placement. There was so much blatant product placement. There was one time when they were at the pool party and Nisha, who's the best friend of Cameron says, "What are we doing?" And Nisha says, "Eating free Pizza Hut is what we're doing." That was not it. There was Doritos, there was Core Water, there was Old Navy, there was Sun Chips. She's like, "You cleaned out all the Sun Chips." There was Smart Food, that popcorn brand. I think they sent out a mass email to every snack company in the country, and a lot of them agreed. Also, I'm sorry, just the name of Addison Rae's character, like, who chose this name? Her name is Paget. Like pageant, but not really. There was this really small moment at the beginning of the movie where Paget is telling her mom that she paid the plumber for the work because she has a bunch of sponsorships and is making a bunch of money being an influencer. She has 800,000 subscribers or so pretty large as far as influencers go. It was such a throwaway line that she paid for the plumber and all that, when, like, that's a way more interesting dynamic and conflict for a character. A young girl paying for, like, her family's things and being financially able to do so. It's an issue with, like, child actors and influencers. And honestly, now I'm curious. I would love to see a good movie and a good script about sort of being a young influencer and, like, all of the pressures of, like, paying your family's bills. I think it's a big problem, something that's not being talked about very much. Whenever someone writes a fictional adaptation of that's accurate, I think they're gonna get a lot of critical acclaim. An influencer needs to get on that and write sort of this fictional representation. I mean, it's very relevant to, like, the Britney Spears thing. It's so relevant to a lot of famous people that have been wronged or taken advantage of for their money. That's a whole side note, but I would love to see that. Honestly, let me know if you've seen anything that addresses that conflict in sort of a fictional sense, because I've seen a lot of documentaries and stuff, but no fictional representation. Everyone always likes to make their character an influencer. The Gossip Girl reboot did it too, but we don't see much about that conflict of, like, having financial pressures from family and things. I think that's way more real. Another critique, I have 2 words for you, and that is Kourtney Kardashian. They shoehorned Kourtney Kardashian into this movie. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because she's best friends with Addison Rae, but she played, like, Addison's PR manager person that would just call. We only saw her, like, calling Addison Rae. And Kourtney Kardashian just literally looked like she was reading cue cards behind the camera. She had her robotic demeanor. I guess she was playing the vapid LA manager lady, but it was a little too good, and it was bad. It was bad. I'm just joking that it was too good. It was bad. Oh my god, and She's All That, apparently, it was like Usher that was doing their school announcements throughout the whole movie. And I was just mad, and He's All That, there was no cool announcer. They could have had, you know, Lil Nas X there, or Dula Peep, or Billie Eilish doing the morning announcements. We find out later it was Matthew Lillard, the principal. He was the one doing the announcements, but I just think it was a missed opportunity again for someone cool. So I really do think that Cameron not having a smartphone was a big miss. I guess this is still part of the writing. He didn't have a smartphone, which to me, even though he was supposed to be this, like, woke anti-technology guy, I don't think a Gen Z kid would not have a smartphone just to make a statement. I would think someone like this would be all over Reddit all the time, would be up on Twitter canceling people, you know, like, it would make sense, like, for the late 2000s, maybe. Actually, my boyfriend, also named Cameron, was very similar and was like anti-social media and technology. He's not like that anymore, but he was a lot like this character. It was kind of funny when we found out they had the same name, honestly. This plotline of not wanting technology makes sense for like that era when iPhones and stuff were still becoming mainstream, but nowadays I think it's too important to have a smartphone for a teenager. Someone like him would need ways to be informed, like if he cares about social justice or whatever it is he cares about. That's the other thing that made it such a bad trait of his. We never saw where all of this personality against technology and like edginess, we never saw where that came from. We know he's a photographer and that his mom died, and that was sort of like when he changed and became like moody, which makes sense, but the beliefs against technology and social media were not founded in much. We never saw him reading, we didn't see him researching stuff on his non-smartphone. It just felt super random that he had such strong principles and beliefs, but we didn't see why. Again, that's a writing flaw. Nisha, his best friend, said it best herself. She said, this is a direct quote from the movie, "Your aversion to technology is starting to become a character flaw." Which I'm like, okay, self-aware script. Finally, let me talk about the horse situation. Not the whores, the horse. A big part of Cameron's character is that he is obsessed with horses. The little sister tells Addison he's into horses. Addison's like, oh, like a cowboy? And the sister's like, no, more like a horse girl. I'll get to some positives later on, but that was a good term to use. One of the few times when like online in touch lingo came up. And as soon as they started with the whole horse thing, I knew watching it that there was going to be a big horse payoff at the end. Probably him and or her or both riding into the prom together on the horses. That was my big prediction, and what happened was he came on the horse as like kind of a Prince Charming moment at the end. And the whole horse thing, which had a fun payoff, sure. I'm just gonna get petty on this situation because never in my life has being a former horse girl benefited me. I'm still waiting for the apocalypse to come when there's no cars working anymore and everyone looks to me like, how do we ride these horses? But until that happens, my horse girl knowledge has not been useful, except in this movie. So there were just so much about this horse plotline that were not okay. It's very petty of me. I think it's a suspend your disbelief moment because we just want him to ride in on a horse at the end. But alas, I know what I'm talking about on this one, so I'm excited. This guy is into horses and he goes every morning to work at a ranch. It's not clear what he does or what his title is. He just works there. Paget comes in and tries to help him and tries to get him to teach her how to ride horses. First of all, this guy, he is kind of like woke, liberal white guy type. Horses and horseback riding and all of that is a very elite kind of classist hobby and activity because it is extremely expensive. It is very expensive to rent a stable, to have a ranch if you have a whole ranch. If you have a couple of horses, you'll just rent stables, and you have to also pay for the people taking care of them, for the vet care. There's a lot going on, not to mention all the equipment, the saddles, the bridles, all these things that are super expensive, and therefore it's rich people participating in horse hobbies and horseback riding in general. We never really get much explanation why he loves horses. He just loves them. We don't get clarity on what his job is at the ranch. We know it seems like he cleans the stables, but also after they clean the stables, they go riding the horses, and he takes her and teaches her, and he knows all the horses and all this, and I'm just like, this is not realistic. Like, if you're the farm hand and the ranch hand, you don't just get to play around with the horses all the time at any time you want. You have to have equipment for it. And it just felt random for him. Like, why is he a horse girl? I think for his type of guy who's like hipster and into photography, like horses make no sense. He could have been into like vintage cars and been a mechanic, and it would have been like hot too, you know, kind of thing. He could have at the end come in like a vintage ass super nice, whatever, Cadillac, I don't know what the vintage cars are, but a vintage car of some kind. I'm nitpicking too much. I am being petty on this one because I know it's just like for the payoff at the end. Also, a final critique I'll talk about, which isn't much necessarily a critique. I've talked about this before in my kissing booth video, but there was no acknowledging of COVID, and it was canon in the movie that it is 2021. They say our 2021 prom king and queen, but there's no COVID in this universe. Again, I feel like people enjoy this. I like this just fine. It was filmed during the pandemic, so it was a choice not to include COVID. Again, I'll reiterate, I don't know when this is going to stop being relatable, which already the movie is not very relatable, but I do find it odd that in teen movies, at a certain point, I feel like they're going to have to acknowledge COVID because teens are not going to relate to a pre-COVID universe. So finally, let me get into some of the positives. I know I've torn this movie apart, and there were a few things I enjoyed out of it for sure. I did not get my Kiss Me remix during the big reveal transformation scene, but I did get it at the very end. My prediction at first was that it was going to be a trap remix of Kiss Me just because that's more trendy with Gen Z. I was pleasantly surprised that it was a synthy dance Kylie Minogue style Kiss Me remix at the end. So it was exactly my taste in music. Rachel Lee Cook, who plays the mom, came in and was like, why do I know this song? And it just felt so annoying. Like, I wish they had just made her same character. So Rachel Lee Cook played Lainey in the original, and she played Addison Rae's mom in this. But they're not the same character, so it's like we're not in the same universe, I guess, or I don't know. But she wasn't playing Lainey as a mom in this, and I was hoping she was because they kind of left it ambiguous, but when I looked it up, it said no, she's not Lainey. But I'm glad they brought her back in general. I'm also glad they brought back Matthew Lillard. I think he's so funny. I always think of this meme that goes around online where he's like, I don't remember filming. I think there were a couple characters I really liked. I think they had this storyline that was a side thing that was Nisha, who is Cameron's best friend, and Addison Rae's friend. That's the nice friend, not the mean friend. This was a really cute story, and Nisha was one of my favorite characters. I think she was my favorite character because she was protecting Cameron's feelings, and it was just nice to have that energy for him to lean on. And it was cute that she ended up with Addison Rae's friend. It was a cute romance that developed there. And I think the little sister was another character I really liked. In the original, there was a little sister too, and she was played by Anna Paquin, who was the lead of True Blood on HBO, that series. But the little sister in Hes All That also, I think, was a well-written character. She was the most Gen Z, and I feel like the protagonist of this movie should have embodied a lot more of the little sister. Her name is Bryn. She had the fashion down. She had the bucket hat, baggy pants. She just nailed the Gen Z look. She was also a bit of a fangirl. Like, in reality, I would think the main character of this teen movie would be a teen that's like influenced by influencers, not a straight up influencer. Like, that's such a different life than just like being in high school. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense that Addison Rae is an influencer and a regular high school teen. Like, you're not that big an influencer without having a totally different life than the average teen. Sorry, this is supposed to be the positives, isn't it? The little sister did great. That was a great character, and I think that type of character should have been more of like the main character. And I also noticed some cute little references. I mentioned how the final speech reminded me of the Mean Girls final speech. It was shot very similar, and it makes sense because it's the same director. The Great Gatsby party reminded me a lot of like season 1 of the original Gossip Girl. Even like a lot of the characters, there was a lot of parallels I noticed to season 1 of Gossip Girl. And then the very end had, I don't think this was a reference, but spoiler alert for Devil Wears Prada. At the very end, Addison Rae sees the call coming in from Kourtney Kardashian, and she's like, done, like hangs up. She doesn't throw it in a fountain the way she does in Devil Wears Prada, but it's the same kind of sentiment. I just thought those were some cute little references that I don't know if they were intentional or not. That's all I have for Hes All That. I know it was a lot, but I really got into this one. I had a lot of thoughts because I watched both movies together kind of. I think She's All That is worth watching. I recommend it. It's not super accessible, unfortunately. I had to fucking rent it. I spent $4 on it, but at least the script was good. Please let me know what you think of He's All That. If you've watched it, if you plan to watch, I would love to hear any thoughts you have in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.